Okay, hello, welcome to another Zoom group. We're going to start off with a bit of meditation. So you're very welcome to join in on that if you're watching the video later. If you don't want to do that, you can skip forward. It usually takes about 15, 20 minutes, something like that. The focus of the communication is, sorry, the focus of the meditation is communication. And broadening and becoming a bit more aware of the deeper communications that are going on. So like in front of the scenes, the communication will be, you'll be in a room probably, you'll be watching a device of some kind, whether it's a laptop or a tablet or a phone, and you'll have a little, picture of me and you'll hear my words. And so that's kind of in front of the scenes. That's the extent of the communications, technological, it's through Zoom. And then the meditation we're going to do is to go deeper into and to sort of add a bit more depth to that and become a bit more conscious of the other aspects of the communication that are happening. So with meditation, I like to just close my eyes. I don't like to get into a special meditative position first. And I do that because I want to see what my body is like. I want to see how it is, how I'm sitting, how comfortable I am. Because, I've been meditating for 30 years at least, if not longer. And it's still, when I just close my eyes, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not actually that comfortable, or not as comfortable as I thought I was. I'm suddenly aware of a lot of discomfort. So it's still valuable for me to just close your eyes rather than get into a sort of special, in a way, not unnatural, but unfamiliar position, because then I would miss that. So yeah, if you just close your eyes, and then we'll just spend a little bit of time helping your body get more comfortable. So depending on where you're at with meditation, if you're brand new to meditation, then yeah, you need to scan your body. Like I talk about in the daily meditations, scan your body from your head down to your feet, back up again very slowly. And after a couple of years of doing that, you get more familiar with your body, and you get more familiar with the sensation in your body. So if you feel so that, after a bit of experience, as soon as you close your eyes, whichever part of you is uncomfortable or needs attention will kind of call to you, and you can deal with it. I do talk about transverse sites in the daily meditations, and they are always good places to check. There are areas that go across your body. Mostly your body runs longitudinally. But for this, I'm going to just draw your attention to certainly some of the ones that I find particularly, they have a strong tendency to accumulate tension. So these ones are going to be a little bit more subtle than usual. I'll include the usual ones as well, but these will be a bit more subtle. So if you bring your attention to the center of your forehead, people talk about it as the location of the third eye. I don't really think it is myself. It feels, the third eye feels a lot deeper in the inside. But anyway, center of your forehead, that spot there. Now, that you could be going, how would there be tension there? But it's surprising. It's one of those ones that when you put your attention on it and you think about letting go of any tension there, it's like this kind of a rose unfolding. It's like there could be layers of tension up there in that area. And the more you focus on it and kind of are willing to listen to it, what it has to tell you, as it eases, you get that sense of unfolding, like a rose opening. So that's a good area to kind of have a little look at. And then if you just drop down a little bit to your eyes, can be a lot of tension in the eyes, because the eyes serve so many functions. They're part of your nervous system. Your eyeballs are actually they're more like bits of your brain than they're like extrusions of your brain, the little balls on the end, much more than a separate, separate thing that happens to be connected to your brain through a cable. Your eyes are much more like stalks of your brain. So our nervous system uses them for protection, for checking for danger, for all sorts of things, as well as registering beauty. And it's a lot of information comes in through the eyes. So they're always moving, and there's 6 muscles around the outside of your eyes, the extrinsic muscles. Then you've got a couple of rings of muscles on the inside of your eye, your intrinsic muscles. So you've got your ciliary muscles. They're the ones that move your lens for focus. And then you've got the muscles around your iris for opening and closing it. So similarly to that point in the center of your forehead, then when you pay more bit of attention to it, your eyes can start to ease and soften. And one thing I find is very nice for highlighting that is just gently swaying your head from side to side. You certainly get the feeling of the two muscles. Two sets of muscles, right, for each eye that move your eyes left to right. And actually moving your eyes left to right is very soothing to your amygdala, which is quite deep in your brain. So that's a little pro tip there. If you're ever feeling very stressed with your eyes open, if you just gently look from side to side, it can soothe you. It has to do with movement, forward movement. Your brain thinks you're moving forward and facing whatever it is that you're anxious about. If you move your eyes from side to side, regardless of whether you're moving or not, your brain, your amygdala will shut down a bit, and your reticular activating system will calm down. So even just moving your head from side to side gently highlights any tensions in those muscles in your eyes, and it's also quite soothing. Another area that's good to have a look at is your throat, particularly the part of your throat that you make your voice, or that you speak with. That can be quite tense. Similarly, can be subtle. More attention you put on it, the more it can settle down, ease off. Heart area is another good area to have a look at. It's a little bit like your forehead. It can be hard to feel anything there, but if you think about it in terms of expansion, you've got your pericardium around your heart. It's like a bag that your heart sits in. And the more you think about that bag becoming easier, the more feeling of space you can have in your heart area. Another nice thing to get a sense of is that your heart area is a little bit like an energy generation field generator. So you can reach out with your heart and feel a much bigger space around you the more you come into it. Intestines are another good area to put your attention on. Again, they will ease. The more attention you put on them, the more they'll ease. It can feel like a clenched fist sometimes, and just you don't even know it's clenched until you start to let it go and let your belly flop. Pelvic floor is another good one to put your attention in. it's a part of us that we use a lot during the day. It's quite easy to be really unconscious of it though. So if you can't get a sense of your pelvic floor, if you sort of draw it up on the inside, immediately it'll become clearer to you. So I found that you get the most sort of response from my pelvic floor if I'm very kind towards it. It often feels very fragile or sensitive, more sensitive than other parts. So if I kind of go into it to, all right, you're going to relax, it doesn't work. But if I come into it more from a comforting, kind kind of space, it does open up more, does relax more. So as you've been coming more into the sensation of your body, you've been you could think of it as that you've been pulling back from your body. If your body is like a big jelly mold that you kind of look out through, as you come away from that, you detach from it, go back into inner space a bit more. And as you do that, you can let go of the shape of your body or what you think the shape of your body is, and allow the sensation to dictate where things are. So what I mean is, instead of thinking, oh, well, my feet are down there and my head is up there and my arms are over there, just let them be wherever they are and let them move. They may, as you just stay with the sensation, they may move. Your feet might come up a bit, your head might go down a bit. Just allow it to be more fluid and let it be what it is. Because the deeper you go back into inner space, the less things are the same as when you have your eyes open. Now, if your mind gets involved in this and goes, oh, hang on a minute, now my feet are always down there, what's this rubbish? You can, be kind to your mind and go, okay, well, we're just, experimenting, just really want to feel what the sensation is like. If it gets really upset, you can say, well, it'll all be exactly where I left it when I close my eyes, so I can open my eyes and check. But for now, let's, can we just put all that on hold and just let the sensation inform you? So if you can bring your attention to your hands now, and just take note of the difference between the sensation in the front of your hands and the back of your hands. And by the front of your hands, I mean your palms, your fingertips, I'm calling that the front, and then the back of your hand. And in the same way, just let go of the idea of the shape of your hands and just go with what the sensation is like. If the sensation is big, it's bigger on the front. You'll find that the sensation is bigger on the front. For me, anyway, it is. And then the sensation on the back is different. So that the shape of it changes. The shape of your hands can change against the idea. So someone's just joined. We're just in the middle of a meditation. So if you want to close your eyes and join in. We're just at the sensation of our hands and contrasting the difference between the sensation in the front of our hands and the back of our hands. And for me, the shape of my hand changes from being symmetrical, meaning the front is the same size as the back, to the front seems huge in comparison to the back. So just try and take a snapshot of what the sensation in your hand feels like. Get a good reference for it. So now, if you like to reach out on either side of you, as if you're reaching out to touch someone on either side of you, and just hold the intention that you'd like to connect with. We'll start off with me because it's, easy. So just staying with what that sensation of in your hands was, see if you can get a sense of just something slightly different as you reach out on either side. So you'll have the sensation of what your hands felt like. And now you're reaching out with the intention of connecting with me, and you may have a sense of something else in the sensation in your hands. That'll be me. Now, if your mind again starts to kick in and go, hang on, he's in Ireland and I'm in whatever country you're in, space and time operate differently behind the scenes here where we are at the moment. So you can say to your mind, yeah, I'm going to have a good old think about all of that later, but for now, I'm just going to really focus on the sensation. I'm just going to feel whatever I feel. And the other thing your mind might do is make it up, which is different. Like your mind might go, oh yeah, I can definitely feel something. Yeah. Let it just dawn on your hands, dawn into the sensation, because your mind can immediately think of it, but this thing I'm talking about will kind of seep into the sensation in your hands. And if you're watching the video afterwards, you can do this too, because as I say, time and space operate differently behind the scenes. So you can connect with me. So now see if you can include the other people in the group. See if you can get a sense of them as well as me. So all of us that are here. And it will be similar, but just, slightly different. So you got the reference of what your own hands felt like, and maybe what it felt like when you were connecting with me, and now you're including the other people in the group. And the same, if your mind is getting involved, just make a little deal with it that you'll think about it later. But for now, you just want to focus on the sensation. And similarly, you don't want your mind getting involved and organizing everybody in a big circle and imagining what that sensation feels like. You let that fade away and just stay with this kind of seeping feeling in your sensation that there's something, slowly dawning and being included in your sensation. And now see if you can include everyone who's going to watch the video. And that's the same thing, like time and space operate differently here behind the scenes. So it's quite possible for you to connect with everyone who's going to watch the video. And if you're watching the video, it's quite possible for you to connect with everyone, me, the group, but also everyone who's watched the video before you and everyone who's watched the video after you. Same again, if your mind gets involved with that, you can have a good old think about it later. But for now, just be with the sensation. You can allow that sensation to come travel up your arms and, you know, be part of your bigger sensation in your body if you like. You don't have to keep it in your hands. Lovely. Okay, so the thing is with this behind the scenes, you know, time, space differently. When you hear, for example, people talking about profound realizations they've had, whether it's from some sort of an acid trip or they fasted for 40 days or they've been on an ayahuasca ceremony or some mild mind altering thing, and they have the realization of connection and oneness where they go, oh, I looked at the tree and the tree was me, or I looked into someone's eyes and there was no difference between me and that person. Well, they don't, you know, it's not like they merged into another person physically or merged into a tree or anything like that. Where they felt that connection and had that realization is here, where you are right now, behind the scenes. That's where they felt the oneness, where they had that knowing of oneness. And this is the extra dimension in the communication, that we can connect here behind the scenes, and that you can connect behind the scenes. You can always connect behind the scenes. There's always friendly energies to connect to, or people behind the scenes, and you're never really alone, which is a good thing to kind of know about, particularly now when everybody's in isolation of one kind or another. There's always something to connect to. You're part of something. This is where you can feel it behind the scenes. Okay, so we're going to start coming back now we're going to come to the end of this meditation. So depending on where you are with meditation, if you're quite experienced, I'll start off with if you're new. If you're new, and you feel like you've traveled somewhere, then take a bit of time to travel back before you open your eyes, because it can be disorienting if you don't do that. If you're reasonably experienced with meditation, you can experiment with just opening your eyes and seeing if you can hold the inner space and the outer space together. And if you feel like you lose it, you can just close your eyes again, go, oh yeah, there it is, and then open them again. Just depends. You can use your eyes like a valve to equalize pressure in behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. That feeling of travel that you get is more to do with your nervous system. People talk about, oh, I went very deep. You don't really go anywhere. Like this inner state, this very deep inner state, it's completely accessible all the time. You don't have to go anywhere. It's just there. And all closing your eyes does is just make you aware of it. And as you meditate more, you bring that depth up to the surface so that it's more part of your whole life. Okay. Now, just for anyone who joined while we're in the middle of that, you can turn your camera on or off, or your microphone on or off, or you can just text through the chat thing. And it's whatever you want is fine with me. There's no should or shouldn't or anything like that. So like I say at the beginning of all these Zoom groups, that the time of the guru is over, the time of the spiritual teacher is over. We're the next Buddha, this group, or anyone watching the video, or the community. TikTok man said it, the next Buddha is the community. That's a good quote I like to think of for this. And Ram Dass's thing of we're all walking each other home. So we're all helping each other. I'm facilitating the group and I've got my own experience, and I'm sure I'll share that. But it's not like I'm saying I know the truth and I'm going to tell you what it is. I don't think there is any truth. I think it's all, each one of us has our own truth. I don't think there's an ultimate truth. That's what I mean. So with that in mind, I mean, I've had a couple of things come in I can talk about, but I'd much prefer to talk about the sort of things that you're interested in, that you're concerned about. If you've got any questions or anything you want to share or anything like that, I'm much more interested in that. And I can get to my stuff after. So yeah, does anybody have anything they want to say or ask a question or share or anything like that? Okay. Now I had a letter come in. It's longish but lovely. Okay, so they say, I wonder if you could share your experience on how you deal with solitude. When the moment comes in life that we discover who we are and see the unique gift only we can share in this particular way in the world, and it seems like we never end discovering this, I find there's also a difficult part that comes with it, which is a kind of loneliness associated with realizing that the more we become truly ourselves, the harder it gets for others to understand us. The letting go of belonging with others like us leaves a feeling of grief and solitude. It's weird to feel both poles of this joy of feeling we have a special, meaningful place, and at the same time losing that sense of belonging. It seems natural at that moment to connect to something bigger. I can see that we all express different facets of one love, with capital O. Connecting to that love is resourceful. Also, it puts us in front of the fact that our journey here is just a passage and that the true reality is so much bigger. Anyway, I think there's still a feeling of loneliness that accompanies the emergent moment, like a homesickness of some type. It feels a bit like that moment you travel for the first time and come back home to realize it'll never be home again since you've changed from your travels and will never quite fit anymore. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. Okay. Yes, I relate to all of that. I think it's put very nicely, and the way they put it. Yeah, certainly. It's like most things in spiritual growth. It's paradoxical, because if I think, someone's saying that's a brilliant question. Yeah, it is. If I think about when I was, in my teenage years, I was in the Scouts, and not the Boy Scouts, with the teenage Scouts. They were called Venture Scouts in Ireland. So I had a group of like 20 friends, and we used to go everywhere. I mean, we used to go camping every weekend, and we'd go rock climbing and canoeing, and I don't mean I had 20 acquaintances. I had 20 friends, right? And if we went to a disco, we would all be in this huge ring. It was hilarious. That's kind of how tight we all were. And like, compared to that kind of friendship, I don't have any friends now. Okay, which sounds terrible, but what I mean is, like, I've since met those people. Like, I met them a couple of years ago, and of course we were completely different. I had nothing in common with them now, or very little. I mean, they're all lovely. We have shared history, we have shared past, but who we are, and what was very, like, we were all kind of on the same wavelength, I suppose. And and then over time, once the group broke up and we all went off into our own separate ways, that was gone. So if I looked at it in that perspective, I could go, yeah, well, it is pretty lonely. I've no friends like that anymore. I don't have that kind of ease or friendship with anybody. But I if I think of when I was like with that group, anyone who wasn't in that group was pretty much a stranger, or, you know, like other. That's probably what I think of it, other. Um, and now if I think about how I am with people, it's like just walking down the street. I have a receptivity in me for everybody in a way that I just definitely wouldn't have had back then. So looked at from that perspective, um, I'm much closer to everybody now than I was. And I'm using that kind of example of way back then. Um, you know, it would have been back in the 80s of that group of friends, you know, because I've gone through quite a few different groups of friends. And I mean, I'm only talking about me, but I think it's a common thing, you know, that like if I meet somebody and they're like, oh yeah, this is my friend, he's been my friend since I was in school, I find that amazing. It's like, how did you manage that, you know? I mean, I still know people that I went to school with for sure, but we're very different now, so we're not like close like we were when we were friends. But that feeling of connection, or it's not like I walk down the street and I'm like, you know, throwing my arms around people. If that was encouraged at the moment, it's not encouraged, of course, at the moment. But yeah, I don't mean that. I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't mean that. But there is an openness in me and receptivity, so that if somebody, a complete stranger, in inverted commas, stood in front of me and told me something very personal and very profound, it wouldn't bother me at all. And what's harder is if they asked me something very personal and very profound, assuming I didn't think that there was something, you know, up with them, like, you know, that there was just, it was just genuine, you know. Um, I would be, I'd be quite happy to say that to them, you know. I certainly wouldn't have had that before. So there's that aspect of it, like the kind of what we think of as friends. Then that feeling of solitude is, for me, it's like, I don't know if it's necessary, but it's certainly something I went through and I go through and I continue to go through. And if anything, it's more intense now than it used to be. I think that's part of it, but it's not solitude in a, you know, lonely, me, I'm on my own. I don't mean that. It's more to do with coming into the reality of my existence, which is, you know, even I was born on my own and I'm going to die on my own. And I don't mean both possibly will have people around, but the process is a personal process, much like sleep. You know, you can't go asleep with anybody else. You might be lying in the bed beside somebody else, but you can't go asleep with them. You have to do it on your own. And you know, as I've talked about sleep a lot in the Zoom groups, but sleep to me is it's very instructive and it's very telling, and there's a lot in it, you know. And you know, the most conscious I get sometimes in a day is just before I go to sleep, meaning I'm very, you know, interested in it, or I'm very, it's not interested, I'm just very aware of what's happening. You know, I am about to disappear. You know, yeah, I'm going to dream for a bit, but then there's going to be a bit where I'm going to just completely disappear. And only I can do that. Like even the transition into dreams is a solitary activity. Uh, so the more I focus on that, meditation is the same. It's something you can only do on your own, even though you can connect with people in behind the scenes, as I said. But the deeper you go, the further down into the mystery you go. It's quite a solitary thing. And so from that, I've found that I will go and do things, you know, physically, I'll go and do things on my own a lot more. And it's not really a thought out thing. It's more a sort of a, like life has been kind of nudging me in that direction, to amplify and deepen that sense of, not, well, I don't really think of it as solitude. I more think of it as what's actually happening, you know. Like my whole life I've only ever looked out through these eyes. I've only got this experience, and you know, I'm imagining it's the same for you. And that's not a random thing, you know. I don't think. I think it's a very personal experience. So if I'm having a very personal experience, if I only ever, doesn't matter how much money I have, how much sex I have, how much drink I have, how many things I own, how many cars, all the stuff that people talk about, it's still all going to be looking out through these eyes. I'm only going to have this one singular experience. So the more I kind of settle into that and go, yeah, I better not just ignore that or distract myself, you know, with, you know, trying to have 20 friends again, or trying to have one friend or two friends or anything like that. And again, I don't mean I'm not open to that, but to sort of see everything in its place and kind of go, yeah, there's a singular experience happening here. And the more I meditate, the deeper I go into that, and the more I not explore. It's not an active exploration. It's more I allow it to reveal itself, the mystery of that singular experience. Why is it only just me? You know, I never look out through anyone else's eyes. You know, doesn't matter if I'm looking at 1,000 people in a stadium. Doesn't change. You know, but then there are other things like interactions with people, and you know, it can change things and trigger things, and you know, I mean, we help each other a lot. It's kind of obvious. So that's not, I'm not discounting other people, but just this question of solitude, it's like, it to me, it's a case of settling into a fact, really, a fact in my reality, that I'm alone. And I don't mean that in a, you know, oh, I'm going to become empowered and, you know, I'm going to go to restaurants on my own and have dinner and be okay, or any of that kind of stuff. I don't mean that at all. I don't mean that way. But just the kind of settling into that feeling of, yeah, it's always just me. And not turning away from that and not trying to distract myself from that. So the more I think you settle into that, you certainly do change people. That's been my experience anyway. You go through, you know, be with one group of people, and then everything, you're all kind of going like this, and then it starts to change and you go off. And I think the most helpful thing is to be with the whole paradox of it, you know, that there might be another group of people that you're going to be with and connect with and be beautiful, and that there'll come a point, you know, possibly where it will change and it will be no more. And to just kind of let it be a memory, be a happy memory, not kind of like, oh, I just want to have those friends again. It was great. To just kind of let it go its natural course. And I mean, we have so many nice memories. And as I talked about, you know, last week, everything happens in the moment anyway. This now, you know, it's very hard to be right on top of it anyway. So if you can be with it and allow it to just be part of the current moment, like that was a nice memory. I'm like, I have lovely memories of my 20 friends when I was a teenager, but I'm quite happy for it to be what it is. It's just a memory. And I have a certain resonance from what that felt like in my body, and it's beautiful and lovely. And in a way, I have love for all those people, you know, but I don't miss it, and I don't yearn for it. I just like, because it's inside me, I have it, you know. And then I think the other thing is to, like, you know, to be open to things that change. So you may be finished with one group of people, and that might have come to a nice end, and then you can be like, okay, well, that they may be the last kind of connection I have with in that kind of way, or there might be other people on the way as well, you know. But I don't think it's any accident that most spiritual traditions send you off to a cave of some kind or another, you know. There is something in facing the sorts of things I've been talking about, of aloneness and loneliness, if that's the way it presents. You pretty much get through loneliness, though, into a sort of profound feeling of this, you know, what your experience is, your singular experience. Okay, I just want to quickly check now that I answer everything. I think I did. Yeah. Okay, does anyone have any questions about that or anything they want to share about that?
John, this is Sandy. I have a question.
Yep.
In the context of being alone versus lonely, I have a pressure built up, it feels like, in my system. And for many years, I studied with a lady that talked about our core wound is the initial separation from source, and that our life here is a resolution point and remembering that we're still connected to source. And I get that intellectually, but I feel like I'm on this cusp, and there's some really deep imprints of, I can kind of even remember looking out of my baby eyes saying, I'm all alone here. You know, I wasn't, when I cried, no one would come. And so there's a lot of that in there. So just as I'm moving through these uncomfortable bits in coming to the realization, like the actualization, yes, in my body, I'm okay. I understand that alone is fully supported by source, but it's still just my perspective. And as I'm bringing that awareness deeper and deeper in, it seems to be activating more and more impingement. My system, I'm even shaken just a little bit. You know, I just if you could talk about how to maybe help mitigate and move through some of that. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, I think I get it. Well, you can connect to source straight away. You know, it's there. It's kind of like what I was saying about meditation. It just doesn't have the bells and whistles that my mind would like it to have. It doesn't have the feelings that my mind would like it to have. It's really ordinary.
Right.
It's profoundly ordinary. And the feeling of the feeling of loneliness and, you know, isolation, you know, not to diminish feelings, because everything's valid, but to sort of see it for what it is. It's just a feeling, right? Because, you know, like from my mind's kind of perspective, it's kind, you could think of it in layers, right? So up here at the top layer, that's the bit talking to you right now, and then I drop down and there's all different layers I go through. But then it's at some point, similar to sleep, let's say it was like sleep, you know, dreaming, then crazy dreaming, and then I drop out the bottom of dreaming into deep dreamless sleep. I drop into the mystery, and the mystery is the source as far as I can see. In as much as this part of me knows, the deeper part of me knows for sure. My mind is kind of trotting along behind it, trying to find words to express it. But that feeling of connection and going into the mystery, like if when I think about sleep, and in part you put that parallel with meditation. So if I'm sleeping, I'm sort of dreaming, then I drop out the bottom of dreaming, deep dream of sleep. Okay, I don't even think about it. It's like, great, I'm tucked up, I'm going to sleep, it's going to be brilliant, I'm tired, I need to what, you know, I need to go somewhere. Where do I need to go? I need to go into the mystery, really. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Now, if I'm meditating, so I'm meditating, I have thoughts, I stop thinking, do my best to stop thinking. My focus is to not have a beautiful psychic experience. My focus is to go into the mystery, right? So if I manage to do that, great. How I know that I'm not doing it anymore, is my mind will go, I'll hear my mind going, wow, I'm so deep right now. I'm really having a really, I'm connected with source or something like that, you know. That's where my mind is, okay? And it'll be, and I might be crying, you know, because it's so beautiful, okay? But it's still one step up from from what just happened. Because when I was completely connected with it, I'd no mind, I'd no feelings, I'd nothing. It was like deep dreamless sleep. There was nothing to speak of, you know. And to my mind, that's death, you know. What? Nothing to talk about, nothing to feel. You know, it doesn't like it because it, you know, this part of me is pretty chatty, you know. It likes to think about things and have concepts and, you know, say stuff. But in terms of connecting with the source, and this isn't like readily apparent because my mind like wants to have the feeling, you know, and wants to have the, you know, that sunset feeling. I look at a beautiful sunset and just something happens and there's a resonance, there's beauty, and my mind is like chatting away about it. Like it's like, oh my God, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful, you know. It's like, you know, really getting it, okay? And the end result is still the same. Like the profundity of it happens with nothing, okay? And the expression of that as it ripples up through the different layers of me is the thoughts and the tears and the feelings and all that. But all those are not it. It's below. It's down here in the mystery, you know. And that once you kind of get a sense of that, even though I know I'm just contradicting myself because to have a sense of it means you haven't really got it, but a familiarity with it. Let's say that. Then you start to notice it in less and less dramatic ways until it's all the time. It doesn't matter what's happening. It's you've got that connection. You've got that knowledge of it that you are connected with it. That's again one of the benefits of meditation is you do it enough times, you let your mind bang its head against the wall enough times, it will give up and kind of go, yeah, it is just pretty ordinary. It's, you know, it's completely available every moment. I may not be aware of it every moment, but it's there. As soon as I think about it, it's there. Um, so that's the way it is for me. I don't know. Does that help?
Yeah. I mean, it takes a little bit of the edge off of it. I mean, I get that. There's a little, I don't know the word, but my system, when I'm like, I can do it in sleep and I get that, I relate to that. But from a conscious perspective, to go into the ordinary nothingness and find and feel held there doesn't feel natural.
Yeah. Well, you won't feel held because that's a feeling. What you get is a knowledge that you are held or that you are it. It's you and you're it. Well, this is my experience anyway. Like, I find like the mystery, what I call the mystery, you could call it God, you could call it source. You know, it's so hard to put words on it, but you know, I have this knowledge of this big thing that's running the show, has a particular movement to it. I'm not running the show, but it's doing its thing, and I'm part of it, and it's part of me. I have knowledge of that for sure, but I'm just going to mute your mic because it keeps hogging the camera. Hang on. Oh no, you've done it great. Yeah, I have knowledge of that, but I don't. It's not the way I'd like it to be. It's not what I've been told, you know, like I grew up through Catholic conditioning, right? So, you know, I was told about old man God up in heaven, you know, knows the number of every hair on my head. I mean, who wouldn't like that kind of God, you know, that really personal big parent kind of God, you know? That's not been my experience of this mystery, this thing. It's profound love, but not personal, you know, because particularly because of how I disappear every night, you know. Now, the front part of me would like to think, oh, well, I'm going to continue. But, you know, I just I just don't remember, but I continue on in deep dreamless sleep, like the way I like to think, oh yeah, I'm going to continue after I die. But my experience is I don't continue every night. I completely disappear. The me as I normally know myself, gone. Okay. And um, most mornings, every morning that I've been alive, I come back together and I'm great. It continues on. But that experience of like completely disappearing, if that's what happened when I died, and it may well, now the front part of me freaks out when I think like that. It's like, but what was all this for? What was the point of all this? Like, what am I doing here? Like, what does it matter? Why does anything matter? Um, and that's another kind of paradox to hold the two. Like, I have a knowledge that everything here is really important, okay, but that it also could disappear because there's a deeper part of me that is wordless and pictureless that I quite regularly go into and quite happily go into. So this knowledge of being, like personally, I don't think of it as being held or nurtured or loved or any of the sort of ways that I would think of in terms of a parental kind of figure. Because, like this spiritual life thing, it's been quite ruthless. If I think about some of the things that have happened in my life, it's been quite ruthless, like scary ruthless, and when I see it happening in other people's lives, the way life can kind of carve people's lives up, I kind of think, well, I wouldn't do that. I would, I'm not up for, no pain, no gain. If somebody can get the gain without the pain, great. Who wants pain? I don't. But life is just does its thing, and it's pretty intense. So, and yet I still feel profoundly loved by it, which is again sort of a paradox. So for me, I don't feel held by it so much as part of it. I sort of have this knowledge of it. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah. It's a different frame, but I can go there with you. Like even stepping back just a little bit from, I'm expecting it to look or feel a certain way, and you're inviting us to even go beyond those expectations. I can relate to that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any questions about that? So these are just some of the things that have been occurred to me during the week. I told a little story last week, so I might tell another little story. It's not funny though. So I was on a personal development training, and this is many years ago. And part of it was this process where it had been like 5 intense days, and culminated in this process where you left the room. Everything had happened in this room, and the idea was to leave the room. And sorry, hang on. Does somebody want to say something? I see a microphone popping on there. No? Okay. I'm just going to turn that off. So yeah, the very intense processes in the room, and then this process was you have to go out. You have to go outside the room. So terrifying, number one, because we're all very raw and, emotionally peeled. We've gone through all our stuff. And the process was you had to go and find a random stranger in the town where this thing was going on, just normal town, right? Find a stranger, tell them the worst thing you've ever done in your life, and get them to tell you the worst thing they've ever done. Okay. I mean, when I say it now and I think about it, it was insane. But the processes that had led to this were very intense, and I'd gone through a lot. I really felt peeled emotionally in a good way. But this process just sounded awful to me. I just couldn't. I was like, oh, how am I going to do that? Like, so anyway, we all went out, and you're in a group. There was about 50 people in this training. 30 to 50 people. So you all go out into the town, and I'm wandering around having a panic attack practically. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I tell, number one, I was like, oh, what's the worst thing I was ever done, So I thought of something, and I tried it on a few people. All of them thought I was nuts, and in a way I was a bit. And all I could do was just tell them. They, by the time I'd got to the end of telling them my worst thing I ever did, they were practically running down the street. Like, oh, come back, you've got to tell me the worst thing you ever did. Okay. So afterwards, we all came back into the room, and we, were in our little groups, and we were sharing how we got on. And I just felt terrible. I felt awful because I hadn't completed the process. And, it was one of those, the context of this whole training was about completing processes. Now, I'll tell you all that because for me, like, the real part of that process was, it happened, years later, when I realized that holding yourself in kindness in all the different parts of you is actually much stronger than forcing yourself to do things that in your heart are cruel to you. Now, I don't mean to confuse this with letting yourself off the hook about things or not facing things or any of that kind of thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm just assuming you're all courageous and you're all brave and you're all looking at your stuff. I'm talking about when a part of you, a very kind of judgmental part of you, gets involved and goes, you should do this thing. And it sort of starts to beat up another part of you that is quite vulnerable and quite, raw. That never really produces anything, like in that example, that story I was telling. There are people in the little group that and they had amazing experiences, all of which made me feel a lot worse, by the way. But they had really profound things, and they were like, "Oh, this man told me this thing that he did." I was like, looking at them like, "How did you manage that?" But they were in a very, having a very different experience than I was, because for them it wasn't cruel, it wasn't hard in the way that it was for me. Now many years later, like I only discovered this a couple of years ago, four-ish years ago, that I took this thing for social anxiety. It turns out, like, I score off the charts for social anxiety. Like, I have pretty bad social anxiety. And now that I can kind of put things together, I can kind of think about some of the things that happened to me as a child, and it all makes lots of sense. But at the time, there was a very hard part of me was like going, you didn't complete the process, you stuffed it up, you failed basically, and what's wrong with you? And look at that person, they got this beautiful experience. So I haven't got a nice story for the opposite of that, because I live it pretty much every day. There's huge power in holding yourself in kindness, and particularly, like, it's easy to kind of hold yourself in kindness when you're looking good and you're doing things like, everything's going well and you feel like you've got your act together. And I don't mean that. I mean when let's say a lot of stuff about health and nutrition and diet, right? Let's say that, for example. And something happens and something's triggered, some part of you is triggered, and you're feeling very vulnerable and very fragile. And a little part of you says, I want cookies, or I want a cake, or something like that. And it doesn't just want a piece of cake, it wants a whole cake, for example, right? Or a whole box of cookies, something like that. So one part of you is like going, This is so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing that I'm sitting on the couch eating a whole box of cookies, right? But there's huge power in allowing that part of you to do what it needs to do, to be kind to it and let it just have its what it needs, and love it. Um, that part of you has much better chance of uh, changing and healing and not needing a box of cookies next time. How you end up getting addicted to cookies is a rough part will say, no, you can only have 2 cookies. That's it now. We know what you're like. You'll just eat the whole box and, you know, all that kind of sort of thing. And it doesn't get heard. That part of you doesn't get heard and doesn't get what it needs. Because when those parts of you can get what they need, then they don't need so much externally. They don't need the cookies. They don't need the cake anymore. But it's very hard and it requires a lot of courage and love to hold yourself in that kindness, or hold that part of you in kindness as it eats the cookies. And you're almost like, oh no, I hope nobody sees me. That's so embarrassing. I feel like, you know, this is completely at odds with my whole belief system about nutrition and diet. And here I am, you know, just to be able to hold that and kind of go, I don't care about any of that stuff. This part of me needs it, you know, much that you would with a little small child who's had a big fright or something. You wouldn't be getting into it with a little kid. You'd you know, they said, what, yeah, okay, what do you need? I want a cookie. Like, well, you just give them a cookie. It's the same, you know, and there's a lot more power in that than allowing all the, you know, the shoulds and the, this is not who I am and this is not how I see myself, all that coming in on top of it. Okay, anybody have any questions or comments or anything about that? No, okay. All right, I'm gonna wrap up now. Anybody got anything before I wrap up? Okay. All right, so yeah, thanks for coming along to Zoom group. Whether you're here in person or you're here in video, and see you for the next one. Bye.